Welcome, Wargamers, to Hedon Knights Week. For this entire week, we will be diving into the darkest of desires within the mortal realms, and exploring the last Chaos God to get a book, and that of course is Slaanesh. But to truly understand this army, its motivations, its goals, and even its physical appearance, we need to understand its patron, the Dark Prince Slaanesh himself. So in this video, to kick off the week, we're going to do just that, sort of a character profile on Slaanesh himself. In tomorrow's video, we'll be talking about his imprisonment and what that means, but today we can explore the character and motivations of one of the realm's scariest forces, and I'll explain just why that is. Slaanesh is one of the 4 chaos gods. He is the god of excess, indulgence, desire, and hedonism, and he goes by many names, 2 of which are the Dark Prince and She Who Thirsts. And right there you'll see Slaanesh described with both male and female wording. And I wanted to address that at the top of the week. Chaos gods, and demons by extension, are neither male nor female. They're monsters, the stuff of nightmare and ruin, and not biological in any capacity. But for the other chaos gods, gender portrayal is not a dominant theme, but for Slaanesh, it is. For that who seeks to enrapture every mortal, this ambiguity of gender and sex is a tool and becomes important, as we'll explore. So in short, Slaanesh is neither male nor female, but will change its attributes and appearance to fit what you want to see, what you desire, or what will disarm you. That being said, this week I'm going to be using the male pronoun, simply because I think the Dark Prince is a really cool name that of course has a male connotation to it. Like the other chaos gods, they were birthed by and feed upon mortal emotions. When we feel, experience, or project emotions, we empower them. And so if we feel rage, we empower Khorne at least a little bit. If we feel despair, Nurgle smiles. If we create plots and schemes and change things, then Tzeentch is empowered. And Slaanesh is no different in that respect. Our hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure and self-indulgence given form, but more accurately, it's the desire for excess, to have more or too much of any given thing. Now, historically, this has been most easily represented, at least on a model basis, with physical pleasure, sex, drugs, and the arts, meaning music and paintings, things like that. But when I say excess, I mean excess in all things. You want to be the greatest leader? Are you obsessed with your combat prowess? Do you want political office in a free people's state? Do you want to be the perfect warrior, to know the most magic? Do you love food in all of its glory? Those things all sound very understandable. There's a wealth of people who have type A personalities who just want to be the absolute best at blank. And that's all surface level stuff that we can understand. Now, those kinds of things feed Slaanesh, but let's get really into it and show you why Slaanesh is super dangerous. What if your sole devotion, your excessive thought, is to purge the realms of chaos? What if you were solely motivated to an excessive level by, say, let's just pull 3 things out of the air: rage, despair, and secrecy? The point I'm trying to make here is that the smallest mortal, to Sigmar himself and the Pantheon trying to vanquish chaos, to the other chaos gods who all focus so heavily on a single thing, they can all empower Slaanesh with their zeal, an excessive commitment to their mission and ideals. No one is safe. The Battle Tome doesn't skate around this whatsoever. Even though Slaanesh is imprisoned, which we'll talk about in tomorrow's episode, the threat that those questions pose to the other major players in the drama that is Age of Sigmar is so big that it has them all on edge. So when you bring that into a singular character, Slaanesh is an incredibly powerful force in the realms. And what I love is how insidious his influence is, that everyone can, by pursuing their interest too much, be brought in to being a Slaanesh follower. It's not necessarily some external force, right? It's not like you got infected from a Nurgle thing. It's not like a Khorne army came and slammed up against you. This is something that can spawn from you internally when things are going great. It could be peaceful, it could be calm, and you're just out there trying to be the best at something to an excessive degree. It doesn't require this external event to happen to you. Now, moving from the nature of Slaanesh to kind of physical appearance, this gets a little tricky. Slaanesh doesn't really have a hard physical form. We've seen pictures of the Dark Prince when it's all chained up, but that's just one more temporary shape. Tzeentch does something very similar. He also has this ever-shifting form, but Tzeentch does change for change's sake, and that's why he's always kind of twisting and changing and that kind of stuff, whereas Slaanesh changes to suit the desires and temptations of the viewer. Whatever you want most, he will look like. And that includes, but is certainly not limited to, sexual attractiveness. There's actually a story in Warhammer 40k that I could not find for the life of me, but it's one I really liked, where a Grey Knight, who was, if you're not familiar with 40k, they're like paladins who vanquish chaos, and that's pretty much their sole mission, makes it all the way to the center chamber of Slaanesh, where you might think he might be tempted by some physical beauty or something like that, but he sees a child, and the reason being, what this hardened warrior wanted to see was something innocent, and that split moment of innocence allowed him to be destroyed by Slaanesh. So it's whatever you want to see, not necessarily sexual, but it can be that. Point is, appearances are malleable. As for Slaanesh's demons, they are a fair bit more concrete. And as is a common desire for most mortals, they reflect many enticing physical attributes. They are lithe, swift, often depicted as somewhat hermaphroditic, possessing qualities of both males and females. But again, they're demons, they don't truly have sexes, but the idea is to be alluring and tempting to all that behold them. There's a reoccurring theme that it's all about the eye of the beholder. And we'll talk more about the demon legions this week, but I wanted to bring them up just because they kind of embody that same ambiguity, if you will, in physical features as Slaanesh proper. He isn't a god of war or brute force. His armies tend to focus on speed and swiftness, precision and perfection. One skilled stab of a sword is better than 100 blows with something primitive like a hammer. And like the other Chaos gods, Slaanesh has a slice of the realm of chaos for himself. His territory has shrunk considerably with his disappearance. Khorne in particular tries to carve out more and more of that territory, but he does have a space, and it is the perfect representation of him and his power. While the other Chaos gods are generally loath to let most into their domain, Slaanesh rejoices at visitors and wanderers stumbling in. His domain is simply called the Six Circles. These are 6 concentric circles, so like a smaller circle within a smaller circle, that kind of thing. Each ring is a world unto itself with a particular theme meant to ensnare and trap travelers, so let's go briefly through them. The outermost circle is avidity, and it focuses on greed. It has mountains of gold coin and jewels, and poor souls trapped counting its endless riches stalk among the mountains of coins. Along the paths that are made with diamonds, there are several statues, and some statues are of depictions of Slaanesh, some are mortals at the height of joy. Well, the temptation here is that if you touch any of the gold or the jewels that you see in these huge mountains, you become trapped here. You become one of those people either counting for eternity, or you become the statue. The next ring with the 6 rings is Gluttony, and here you'll find a series of islands in a sea of dark red wine. Each island has a feasting table with the most delicious delights. To take a single bite is to damn yourself forever, because you just kind of keep eating until you get into a form of agony. Like, you're just so full, but you cannot stop compulsively eating. And so their stomachs will split open, and they just keep devouring things. They'll run to the water and try and drink the ocean of wine. And they just kind of sputter into this eternal dead and dying mass as they keep trying to consume and fill up their gullets. The next ring is Carnality, and probably the most recognizable of all temptations. This is the sexual and physical temptation area. Lithe beauties dance around and try to entice you to get to join them, right? Come dance with me. But really, it's just a bunch of harpies that are, if you know the mythos of a harpy, it's a beautiful song to lull you in, and then all of a sudden they devour you. It's the same kind of concept. Beyond that is the Ring of Paramountcy. And when you walk into this ring, you all of a sudden exit onto a balcony overlooking a colossal army, one that goes almost to the horizon. It's full of troops, statesmen, artisans, all hailing you as their glorious leader and asking you to lead them in a fight for the mortal realms. The temptation here is that you have to be humble enough to know that you are not the rightful leader of this army. You have to pass up, because if you choose to say, "Yes, I will lead this army," you become one of the endless souls trapped within it, preying upon the next person who comes through the door of Paramountcy. Beyond that is the Circle of Vainglory. And this opens up into a beautiful forest that reminds you of how great you are. Your triumphs are whispered upon the breeze. There's pools of water that reflect the best versions of yourself, your heroic deeds, all that stuff like that. And the only way to pass through this forest is to dwell on your failures and humility. So it's a whole ecosystem designed around reminding you how great you are. So you can get trapped there just wandering around talking about how great you are. And the innermost circle is Indolency. And this is actually one of the cooler ones. It's just a giant beach that goes as far as you can see. It's got a calming breeze, warm, gentle sun. Your body aches in agony for rest, but you can't stop. You have to keep pushing forward and fight that temptation to rest. Because if you were to stop and sit down and just rest your bones for a moment, you would kind of melt into the earth itself. Now, at the dead center of this entire set of concentric circles is the Tower of Slaanesh. It's actually his home and castle of the god himself. It has mirrors in it that show you every possible version of yourself, from the noble and enlightened version to the dark and debased one. If you stare at them too long, you can go absolutely mad and end up trapped inside of one. Beyond that, the book doesn't have a lot of lore for the Tower of Slimness itself because it just kind of focuses on the fact that the halls are empty and silent. The Dark Prince has not been home in centuries, and tomorrow's video will cover why and how. But I want to talk for just a brief moment about why Slaanesh is cool, and one thing I want to point out here towards the end of the video is there's a ton of lore from the old world, and also things that people bring in unknowingly from 40k that really dive into Slaanesh. So if you love Slaanesh, tell me why, tell me your favorite story, but I know I didn't cover everything here. This is a primer to get people introduced to this idea of a Chaos God. There are a lot of people who joined AOS who aren't familiar with Slaanesh. They kind of see maybe like memes or whatever that make sex jokes, but they don't understand why Slaanesh is actually really cool. So this is very much an overview. And on the note of why Slaanesh is cool, I love this character. I think it's a shame that so many people focus on the shock value of sexual excess, because in addition to that, there's a lot here to explore. The Circles of Slaanesh do a great job of giving examples of common excesses. My favorite one that I saw was Paramountcy. That's the one where you open up and there's a huge army that's like there to do your bidding. Because a story that we've seen multiple times across multiple armies in multiple Black Library books is the idea of something tragic happened, and so this hero took control or rose in ranks to defend their own or seek revenge, that kind of stuff. Like maybe in Call of Archeon, there was a Khorne hero who is rising up through the ranks because he wants to avenge the fact that his people were taken out. So he became a Khorne warlord to do vengeance. Point is, that same kind of cookie cutter is seen across multiple factions. And the idea with this circle is that the god Slaanesh is using the pain of the realms as its own temptation. Here, with this army, you can change things. You can make the world a better place. It's the kind of temptation that I think so many characters across a variety of backgrounds would all fall into. And honestly, when I first started originally with 40k and then also Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I did not like Slaanesh. For the reason that I mentioned before, people got focused on one thing. But as I've explored the character more through Horus Heresy, 40k, and now AOS, I have a much deeper appreciation for where he fits in the universe. Because there's no shortage of people and characters who want something too much, to be the best, to destroy an enemy, to lead an army, to seek security, to seek pleasure, a small bit of happiness in a brutal and dark world. And so I certainly think that Slaanesh has a very fitting place within the mortal realms. Now, my next video is going to be all about Slaanesh's imprisonment and the kind of the ramifications of that. So this is the character profile, and in the next video, we're going to see how does that character fit right now into the current events of our narrative. But what do you think? I want to hear your thoughts on Slaanesh. If you also love Slaanesh, if you are coming around to him, tell me in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Thank you all so much for watching, and happy wargaming.